Thinking about selling your home in Kelowna, one of the most common questions I get is when is the best time of year to sell? And the truth is, it might surprise because it's not always the spring rush. Today, we're going to break down the pros and cons of selling in each season here in Kelowna so you can maximize your price and minimize your stress. Hey everybody, it's Mark Coons here with Selling Kelowna Real Estate Group. And if you're looking to sell any time of the year, pick up that phone, give me a call because it's going to depend on individual needs and wants. And we can break that down and help you get clarified what the true goal is and develop a plan and strategy to get there. But without further ado, watch this video because it will give you a better sense of what questions you should be answering yourself to be able to decide when is the best time for you to sell. We're going to jump right into it, looking at the real estate market, choosing when to sell your home. This is a personal question. And oftentimes, if you're going to ask me at that phone, I'm often going to say it depends because it depends on you. When is the best time to sell? It depends on what your lifestyles, what type of property do you have? There's a lot of different moving parts when it comes to selling a home, moving. Where are you going is the next question that we'll often ask after when you do plan to sell. Do you have a place already? Are you renting? What is the likelihood you're going to find one? Because if you are looking for that perfect place, sometimes it makes sense to find that perfect place first, then get and be aggressive on the sale of your home. I think traditionally, a lot of people believe the spring market is the best time. And that's oftentimes when we see the most amount of sales hit the market. Having the higher sales, but you're also competing with higher supply. Supply and demand has that impact on pricing. There's other ways you can maximize your pricing without needing to sell in spring. If you were to pick 1 month, would probably be the best time, if it generally speaking. When we look at the 10-year average, there's around 600 sales in the spring, about per month. When you're looking from March to May, you can expect around 600. That number has really peeled back in the last few years. We're seeing closer to about 400 sales in those months. But you're also going to compare that to the active listings. On average, on the 10-year average, things are changing right now because now we're at higher supply in 2025 and we're seeing lower demand right now. And so we're about 24 to 2,700 listings on average on the market at that point. But we're starting to see more and more listings hit the market. Coming in December from now, in December, that's the lowest amount of active listings what we're going to have. December and January will have the lowest amount of active listings. Listings start to ramp up heading into the spring. We do hit that peak season of listings right around July. Normally we'll have the highest amount of listings on it. And then once August hits, people are starting to take it off if their home hasn't sold.
This is placeholder media that you'll see if you add a layout to an empty scene.
Let me show you what I mean by this. You can see the peaks and valleys. Oftentimes in January, we're going to see these peaks and valleys, December, January, seasonality. You look at every January, you can see where there's the drop in the active listings. The green here is the active listings on the street. The blues are the sales on each month. This is over the last 10-year period. So you can see how it always ebbs and flows. This is putting it into perspective. In 2025, we're now at this peak here where we're coming down from 3,500 listings and we're going to heading it in. There was a trough last year in January of 2025 and hitting about that 2,200 active listings component. Look at the more recent statistics on it, but the peaks and valleys is what you really want to be watching. When you compare the peaks to the active listings and in the blue, you want to be able to see it. The most amount of listings will normally happen in July marketplace. Then they start coming down as we're hitting the marketplace. If you look at this peak, this was September of 17. But if you can see peaking right around September, October, and then coming down. Here in June and July was the peak in 2024. And in 2025, we had the peak in June as well. You look at the ebbs and flows, you do see it. Also an uptick following the supply increase. You're also seeing uptick in the demand, but the demand normally will start slowing down before the sales do. If you look back to 2023 here, how demand was increasing slightly with the increase in supply. However, demand started to drop off a little bit early heading into summer. And that was the wildfire season in 2023. And demand and the supply didn't catch up and it carried over. And people held on a little bit longer than they historically had in the years. It is different year by year, depending on what's happening in the marketplace. Are starting to take their home off the market and starting to get prepared for getting into winter mode or going back to school. Kids are going back to school, different lifestyle changes. That being said, spring will have the strongest demand of the year. There's lots of buyers searching, but that's when the competition is higher. So there's more listings. It depends on how does your property stand out from the other one. Does it? If you're competing with, say, 500 other homes on the marketplace in spring that are similar to yours or similar price ranges, how are you going to compete and be different than them? That really means that you need to have stronger pricing when it comes down to it and marketing to stand out. Spring is the busiest, but it's also the most competitive. Know that and know how you're going to compete. In the summer months, you're starting to see a seasonal slowdown. Properties are still selling, but now we're getting into summer holidays. People are traveling, kids are at home for the families. It's a little bit tougher to get the home ready and a little bit more of a hassle keeping the home clean and show ready, unless the motivation is there. We expect to see around 580 sales a month in those periods. It's been a lot slower this summer in 2025. That's the 10-year average. In 2025, we're seeing around 350 to 400 sales a month in the residential side of that over the summer. But we are seeing the highest amount of listings on the market. So demand is starting to slow down once we hit summer. And then we're also seeing the highest peak amount of listings. There's around 2,800 to 3,000 active listings on the marketplace. Right now in 2025, we're at 3,500 active listings. So things are changing, but they are starting to come down as we are heading into fall and getting into winter. Things will come. There's a lot of families and a lot of motivation here. So this is going to be people looking to relocate before school start. They're going to probably act in late spring, early summer to be moved before September and be settled, especially if they're moving catchments. The worst thing a lot of people want to avoid for the young families is moving while the kids are in school. A good point too is if property does appeal to out of town buyers. That is a huge portion of our buyer population. In 2025 so far, it's around 35% of our market is from people buying from outside the central Okanagan. That was all the way up to 50% back in 2021 and 2022 when things were flying off the shelf. The outside population was buying about 50% of of the buyers in the population. Supply is at the peak, and this is a good market right now for buyers. So buyers are going to have more choice, more negotiation power, and increases. So summer is strong, but you still need to be sharp on pricing because inventory is at its all-time high. Now, looking at the fall market, we're using September to October as the fall market. Sales are now down to 480 sales a month on the 10-year average, and listings sitting around 2,500 to 2,700. Based on the last 5 years, there's been a huge uptick on it. Trying to take the average, but we are below on the average sale, below that. And on the average listings, we're actually high at that. The gap is widening right now, and it's more of a buyer's market. When you're looking at it, activity normally will dip in spring and summer. Activity normally dips a little bit in fall between spring and summer, but we do see last ditch effort. It can be quite busy. There's a good 30 to 60 day selling windows still now. It's still a healthy market to be selling it. And if you're looking to do something quick and want to do something before year end, this is probably the month to do it. You see less inventory hit the market. You're getting more motivated buyers. You're not spring rush. You see a lot of people looking, testing the market, coming through your home, starting their home search. People feel spring is the time. It's when you're out of winter, the people are starting to feel a little bit better, getting rid of the winter blues, and then they start looking. But once the fall hits, a lot of people are starting to be more serious because they want to get in and be sold before Christmas holidays. And this is very important as well if people looking to relocate here. Maybe they're relocating for work or need to do something before year end. A lot of buyers in here, especially for tax reasons, people can be buying a investment property for tax purposes and needing to do it before the year ends. This is not always a bad time. Again, it depends on the type of home you have, depends on the type of property where you can go. Fall is definitely one of the most underrated seasons to sell it. This is one of my favorite seasons to be part of right now in the market because you are still capturing the good motivated sellers and you don't have to put up with the issues of having your home ready. You might get 4 or 5, but oftentimes those are more qualified buyers than what you would be getting otherwise in spring. All right. And for the final season, my take on winter and trying to sell in the winter is this is an opportunity right now where you're experiencing your homes against the least amount of list. If you're looking to stand out, if you're looking to cut down the amount of showings, and if you're looking to also maximize, you might not maximize your dollar value in this month because this is when the fangs come out this is where the motivated come. If you're looking to make a sale, oftentimes it'll happen quick, especially people want to get moved in. You're going to have motivated buyers coming through your home. You might only get 1 or 2 showings, but oftentimes those are the most qualified showing. You're often going to have to be priced a little bit more aggressive in this month as well, especially looking to sell. Unless if you're okay waiting and trying again in spring, that's a different story. But my advice would be price it accordingly. You can always take it off the market and increase the price in spring. But I would do something like a quick sale, a Boxing Days type of sale to get something done quickly. We personally bought our house that we're still living in December, and we also sold ours in December. If you're buying and selling in the same market, it balances out. It doesn't matter because you can make up the same difference on the buy than the sell. But if you're selling and maybe you're going to rent, and that's why the questions start to become when we first meet or we first start talking, what are your plans? We need to understand what you're looking to do, get a strategy going forward. All right. This is when the supply is at the all-time low. We're at 30% lower supply than we were at the peak. We're seeing huge drops in the amount of inventory coming off the market. And this, if you're a seller, especially if you haven't been on the market, this might be a good time to really stand out and be fresh. Try and get the photos done before the snow flies and the skies are gray, because that'll make your home pop. If you're standing out against other homes on the market with some nice flowers, maybe from spring, this is all strategies. And we've actually done some spring pictures for people when they're planning. Not sure when they're going to sell. They will be selling, but they're not quite sure when it is. And it might be happening in the winter. When we look at it, we're getting pictures done ahead of time so we can stand out in the marketplace. Something to take a look at. But you have a great yard, great flowers. You want to be able to showcase your flower beds. This, even though there might be less buyers, there's also less supply in the market and a great opportunity to stand out, especially for those unique properties. Recapping a little bit, the best time to sell in spring, you're going to have the highest demand, but also the highest. In spring, you're going to have the highest demand, but you're also going to have the highest competition. In the summer, you're going to have still fairly strong demand, but you are also competing against peak supply. And when we get into the fall, is moderate demand and declining supply. As a home seller, and oftentimes that supply that's on the market had been on since spring, and the 6 months is coming up or 4 months is coming up on the listing agreement. A lot of that homes are coming off. If you're a new product hitting the market in fall, it might be able to set yourself apart from the others. And then winter, you're going to experience lower demand, but low supply and motivated buyers. This is when people are coming through wanting to make a choice. The best time isn't really about this amount of sales. It's really about the supply and demand working in your favor. That's why the right timing depends really on your property types, goals, buying, selling, where you're moving to, that type of situation. If you are thinking about selling, you should start planning 6 to 12 months ahead. If you're not clear on your goals, clear on the outcomes, then you're reacting. But if you have a clear plan, and that's something where you sit down and we'll work it through with you, even if it might be 2 years out from now, helps to plan now. Failing to plan is planning to fail. We can always adjust course in the middle of it, always change directions. We don't necessarily need to go through if things do change. If you would like to have it, I do have a seller's guide. Please reach out, drop in the comments, and I'd be happy to send it.